My name's Dave Nellist. I'm a former Coventry Member of Parliament and Independent Socialist Councillor, now the National Chair of the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition. I think the EU is fundamentally undemocratic. Its laws are made by 28 heads of government, 27 of which we don't elect. The EU really stands for employers' union. It's designed to entrench market capitalism and make public ownership more difficult. It promotes the freedom of businesses to move factories and jobs to areas where labour costs are cheaper, and it limits public spending. So on Thursday we have an opportunity, by voting leave, to remove an obstacle to socialist change, to take us out of the orbit of trade deals like TTIP, which would accelerate privatisation in health and education, and to stop the EU undermining trade union and rights and rates of pay. We're not leaving Europe, we're leaving the EU, and we want to build a new internationalism based on socialist cooperation, not market capitalism.
A response now from Dave Nellist.
You scratch anybody in Coventry, and 2 or 3 generations back, we're all immigrants. I came here 45 years ago, found work, stayed, raised a family. So I start from the principle of being in favour of the right of everybody to choose where they live and work. However, the migration that we're facing at the moment is not a matter of choice. It's millions of people fleeing wars, or it's fleeing poverty. And I think we have to address the root causes of those, not to be trapped into a debate which bluntly has turned this EU referendum into a hateful debate on both sides because of this concentration on the immigration. The real problem in this city is not numbers. I know we've had 9,500 people arrive in Coventry in the last 12 months, 6,000 from the EU and 3,500 from outside, but we've grown from 60,000 to 350,000 in the last 100 years and managed in Coventry. The problem is austerity. We don't have the money to provide the hospital places, the houses, the school places, and that's a domestic argument against a government here and governments across Europe who believe in austerity. The final point is, if the EU really was part of the solution, they'd bring in a European-wide minimum wage of at least £10 an hour, so millions of people didn't have to flee from poverty to higher-paying countries like Germany and like Britain. That's the best way to resolve the fears that people have about the pressures of immigration, solve the causes, not just deal with the effects.
A while ago.
Certainly did. I want to get back to the original question that was asked. It's an absolute fallacy to put forward the idea that nice Tory governments in Europe have given us all these workers' rights. Let's deal with the ones that have been raised. Equal pay was won by the women in Ford's in Dagenham in 1968 in a strike. Barbara Castle brought it into law in 1970. The UK joined the EEC in 1973. Holidays were brought in by the 1938 Holiday Pay Act, 35 years before the UK joined the EEC. We get 28 days holiday, the EU only gives 20 days holiday. Maternity rights are 52 weeks in the UK and only 14 weeks in the EU. We got these rights because we got the... Look, if you interrupt people, people at home can't hear you. Let people speak. We got these rights because unions fought for them. The EU has not stopped this Tory government taking away our basic EU rights in the anti-trade union law that was passed in May this year. It's not stopping the French government from reducing trade union rights to the point where 1 million people took strike action in Paris last Tuesday and walks through the streets. We need strong unions to defend our rights, not rely on supposedly nice Tory governments in Europe.
Okay, Philip.
Well, I think the climate of the tone and tenor of the debate is a responsibility partly of the Electoral Commission by the way in which they chose the official leave and remain campaigns, and also by the media concentrating on the most contentious issues rather than most serious. So instead you get huge stories about the evocation of Hitler or the end of Western civilization as we know it. The reality is that the economy is one of the issues, and Philip's right to raise it. He's right to raise the fact that the stock market has been volatile in the last few days. But the stock market is the FTSE 100. It's the 100 largest companies in Britain. They're the ones who make the most profit out of the EU. So if they see a decision going for or against them, that's why they're volatile. I'm more concerned about the local effect of EU membership on jobs in this city. So, for example, 10 years ago, Peugeot, using EU investment in Slovakia, shut down Ryton, the car manufacturing in Coventry, sacked 3,000 workers and shipped the whole place over to Slovakia, moving jobs around the EU to seek lower conditions and rates of pay is the trajectory that the EU is travelling in, and the blocking of nationalisation, of renationalisation, of steel, of post, of rail, of other things like gas and electricity. That's the real issues we should be debating, not the size and the number of bananas on a stem, Hitler, or the end of Western civilisation.
Thank you, Dave. Just very quickly, Dave, you furrowed your brow then, Dave Nellist.
Well, on the question of distrusting experts, I'm with the Queen on this one. The Queen in 2008 visited the London School of Economics to meet the country's most eminent economists at the time of the recession. And her one question to all of them was, why didn't you see this coming? Now, George Osborne told us in November a certain budget forecast. In March, he had to change it. He says that this leave vote could be a giant leap into the dark. Yet he's able to tell us to the exact £100 how a family will be affected in 14 years' time in 2030. So I think everybody has a right to distrust those form of experts. But the last point to make is that there is another recession coming. In or out of the EU, there's another recession coming. It's more to do with global imbalances, the slowdown of the Chinese economy, and to tackle things like that, we need the old socialist tools of public ownership, of planning, to be able to direct the resources and the wealth that we create in this country towards the needs of working people, and the EU is an obstacle to that. That's why I'm voting leave on Thursday.
OK, well, we're back to the Remain side of the floor. So what's your name?
Hello, I'm Anthony. I'm a student at Warwick Uni, but to get there, I have to work to pay my tuition, and I'd like to take
Campaign, Dave Nellist.
40 years ago, this was one of the most equal countries on the planet. Now we're one of the most unequal countries, and particularly as austerity of the last 8 or 10 years has bitten hard. We need tools to change that. One of the key tools is public ownership, the ability to plan, to get back our railways, our postal system, our gas, our water, our electricity. And the EU was set up to specifically block those type of socialist measures. Now, I oppose austerity, whether it comes from Westminster or Brussels, and Thursday gives me the opportunity to vote against both of them. And if we leave, and we get a leave vote on Thursday night, David Cameron is toast. And then on Friday morning, we can move on, not just to demand a change in the Tory leader, but to demand a general election so we can get the sort of government in this country that can defend working people and their families.
And finally, on